It's there for the look.
Just for show.
Yes. All right, everyone. Welcome back to the Music for Humans podcast. Today we got a guest who's been making waves in the K-pop analysis scene with his insightful takes and balanced perspective. Joining us, none other than Dave Disci. Dave's welcome to the show. How you doing?
Hi, I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing good. All right, so it's good to have you. Like we were talking earlier, you got your YouTube channel, doing this analysis of K-pop music. I'm super interested to know how it all got started for you and why did you funnel all your energy towards K-pop specifically, and tell us a little bit about your story.
So when K-pop was always something that I grew up with. My sister was really into it, and my family was very into like Chinese music. So I grew up listening to American pop music, Chinese pop and country, and then K-pop. And in my head, I was always like, this is all just like music. Chinese pop music was more so at the time kind of like rock music. So it all just sounded like just like music to me. And then I didn't realize that a lot of people were kind of categorizing it as different or had a lot of misunderstanding about what the genres were. So when I started to make videos on YouTube, I decided that this was like a good opportunity to kind of hopefully bring it to the forefront more, to talk about it more, and to almost try to normalize it a little bit more so that it's not seen as this like very different genre and it's just seen as music, which is what I think is so cool is that like you don't need to understand the language to understand music. You can still feel the beat, you can still love the energy of music, and that's what I was hoping to do with my channel.
That's amazing. Yeah, I watched some of your videos, and like what I found that really stand out is your balanced approach when you analyze those like controversial stories and all of that. I'm curious to know what's your approach.
Well, first off, thank you. That's just, like so nice of you to say. I think for most things, I naturally tend to be on the neutral side, but I think it's important because, when I do it, it's because I like to make sure I know all the information, and I like to think in my head that there's two sides to a story, and I think everyone knows that, but everyone tends to pick a side and they stay on it. When I do my research, I try to look at both sides of the story and I try to see what their perspective is. Because even like even in an argument that you're having with a friend, you can look at both sides and you can see where they're coming from. Even the person that's being irrational, there's a reason why they're thinking that way and why they're acting that way. And so understanding that gives me an idea, it gives me like a good way to say, okay, well, this is happening, but also understand that this is what they're thinking behind the scenes or what it could be or whatever. Understanding the industry a little bit more. I've worked in the industry for years before I did YouTube, and understanding that side of the industry and being like, okay, so this is probably what's happening behind the scenes. They just can't talk about it, whatever it is. And that helps me be more neutral. Um, I study psychology in
Oh, wow.
college. I was going to be a therapist. That was actually
Oh, cool.
my thing. So I think that helps me too,
Oh.
um, to be able to stay neutral and not pick a side.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I can definitely see how that can help. What made you switch from career or your orientation towards the music industry?
I don't think I ever had a huge passion for that. I think I liked the work, and in college I was enjoying it, but I think I wanted something different, and I felt like I wanted to be more creative. And so I ended up looking for a bunch of work well, I ended up taking a film class as just kind of like a hobby or something that I needed to fulfill in college. And I really enjoyed it. So ended up looking for a lot for some work that was in film. So that was like selling cameras or working in marketing or like whatever it was. And I started to realize that I really liked it. Ended up working for a really big camera company in New York, and I wanted a promotion into the social media marketing department. They said that I was too young and that I didn't know what I was doing. So I showed them, I took my YouTube channel, I grew it pretty fast. I think within a year or so, I went from like 3,000 to like 50,000 followers. And I was
Nice.
like, look, I can help you with your page as well. Because they had like, I think 500,000 subscribers on YouTube, but every video was getting like 300 views.
Oh
So
yeah.
I was like, okay, something's wrong here. I can help. I can come in. I can help you. Yeah, they were like, I'm too young. So I ended up quitting, and I ended up doing my own thing. At that point, I was like, why don't I just do this myself? Because it seems like I can. And that ended up with what I was doing.
That's amazing. That's super inspiring, actually. When you have clear, like example that you're actually really good at what you do, but then there's people that just because of that kind of like hierarchy that is already built in the system, like, oh, you're too young to do this job, or like it's really hard sometimes to go over
Yeah.
these boundaries.
Yeah. So a lot of that stuff I can be upset about. Like I can sit here and I can be like, oh, that's unfair that they thought I was too young. But at the end of the day, people in marketing or higher up or any corporate officer position, they have to go out and meet people. And I was like 24 or 23 at the time. Who's gonna listen to a 23-year-old talk and take that person seriously, right? So I can understand that perspective.
Yeah.
However, I feel like the numbers and the results should be able to speak for themselves.
Yeah.
Um, so that is one of the big reasons why I wanted to do this myself, was like I knew that I could go a little bit further for myself if I just worked harder on
That's awesome. All right, so now let's talk a little bit more about about K-pop. I want to learn more about it. Like I told you a little bit earlier, I know about BTS, Blackpink, a few like big names.
it.
And like I've learned about these these artists through some requests that I've got on my TikTok and YouTube channel. Lots of people are requesting some violin covers of K-pop music, which is great. The one thing that I noticed in most K-pop music is the melodies that they sing is always very complex, and it's not like so that's one of the big differences that I found with, let's say, American pop music, that sometimes the melody are like there's four notes and it's very repetitive. In the K-pop, sometimes the melody are very long and a lot trickier to learn, like just by memory. There's a lot more variations, but the instrumentals are very similar to American pop
Mhm.
music.
I think that perspective is very interesting. Obviously, coming from someone who makes music and produces it, I think that is something that's a perspective that I don't have, right? Like I wasn't aware of all the little nuances in the beat and all that stuff. So that's very cool. I think I think that that is a big draw for why people like K-pop music. I think um, it is slightly different from the pop music, but not too different where people are unfamiliar with it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think the main reason why people like it is because there's been a lot less, and this is probably the fault of like maybe social media, but I've noticed that there's a lot less artists that, and I don't want to say not trying, because they try, but I feel like they're trying more to be relatable or to be a friend on stage or on camera. So that means having their work purposely not look too polished and having it be like almost relatable and fun. And that works. That works for a lot of different artists. But I think people are missing something that is more choreographed and planned and looks very nice. And a lot of K-pop artists, they will spend 6, 7 years literally just training before they even make their first song, before they go public. And I think people like that. I think people realize like, oh, we want music that it looks very good and very put together. And people are classically trained singers and dancers and everything. I
Yeah,
think that, yeah.
I saw a few videos like like the dances, and also I was wondering if you knew anything about this, but the singers, they like, I mean, everything is it's so professional. I was wondering like how are they trained? How are they is because it seems to be like a big cultural thing over there. So is there like how is the industry works? Do they
Mhm.
audition different singers? Like how do they get to take part in those big like superstar groups?
So they open these big labels, right? So the difference in Korean or K-pop music is that the labels are often more famous than the actual groups are, the
Mm.
actual artists, which is completely different in the US, right? Like we don't typically know in the top of our head who's like the label behind these big artists. But in K-pop, those labels are very big, and they would hold annual auditions. So literally hundreds of people in Korea or all around the world will come and audition, and then they pick a bunch of people. And then when they get in, they just become a trainee, and they train for a few years or many years. And then if the label decides that they're good enough, then they debut and they become an artist. Um, and that's typically how it works. The training process itself is very grueling. It's like 14-hour days just singing, dancing all the time. And some labels, some of them don't pay for it. So the either the parents or whoever have to pay for the training, which can get very expensive. And at a certain point, if the parents or whoever is seeing that their kid is not going to debut or feels like it's not going to be worth it, they'll usually pull it out and then the kid will have to do something else. There are some labels in Korea that don't have you pay for it, but then the judges will then be like, all right, that's enough. We're cutting it off. We don't have enough money to keep putting into you. And so, yeah, that is typically the process. It's very hard. I've seen videos of people like fainting. I've seen people starving themselves because they have to fit a certain weight in order to debut and stuff like that. So it's very tough.
That's amazing. It's like like life dedication. It sounds
Yeah.
like it's very similar to going to college in music for like in the US. Let's say if you want to enter some of the top colleges, let's say like Juilliard or even like Berkeley College of Music in Boston. Like these colleges cost it's like let's say for a bachelor degree it's probably almost like $300,000 and then you invest all this money not knowing if you're gonna make any money with this degree. Like most likely you will make very little money
Yeah.
with this, so it's not a great investment. And there's colleges like I don't know if you've heard of Curtis, but Curtis has like a 4% um, uh, rate of acceptance. So
Oh,
a
wow.
lot of yeah, they only take 4% of the people that apply there, but it's free. So if you get in, it's 100% free, and it's all the best teachers in the world, and it's only for classical music.
Oh,
Uh,
wow. Okay.
if you do get in, it's like probably the best school in the world for classical music, but it's
Mhm.
like extremely hard to get in. It's like only the top musicians in the world can get into that college. It sounds kind of similar to the
Yeah.
to that process. And then
Yeah.
earlier you were saying that some people think that K-pop is kind of like a there's like a religious aspect attached to it. Why is that? I'm not aware of any of this, but very curious to know
Mhm.
about.
So I had met a bunch of people who maybe were unfamiliar with K-pop or the genre in general, and one person had asked me if this was like kind of like a religious ceremony music, like they thought it was specifically just catered to Korean people, and there was no like it doesn't make sense outside of the context of a ceremony or something cultural.
Hmm.
And I told them I was like, no, very similar to American pop music, just sung in Korean with very good choreography and just a lot of production behind it. And that I think was something that was hard for people to understand because I think a lot of people they just weren't listening to it. So if they sat and heard it, then they'd be like, oh, that's not what it is. Um, on the flip side of that, there are other people who think that K-pop is just kids music, or they think it's like more it's just very bubblegum pop music. and that exists. That's the stuff that gets seen in America. That's the stuff that gets very big. But if you go beneath the surface of all that, there's of course very meaningful K-pop music that is also sad and has good lyrics and all those sorts of things. So I think trying to break that stereotype is very important. And I think people give it a chance if you want to listen to.
Yeah, I kind of feel like there's a I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, but like the culture of anime too. Like I love
Mhm.
animes, Japanese animes, and I feel also even the music, the theme songs of animes. I love the music in animes. It's so well composed and
Mhm.
all very complex harmonies and melodies. And there's something that I found in the melodies, like the melodies that are singing melodies in K-pop music, that is very similar.
Yeah, there's a lot of overlap there. I think a lot of the audience who like anime are probably, I would say, and this is just kind of stereotyping, but I would probably say would be open to the idea of K-pop just because they understand what it's like to be made fun of for liking anime. And anime is a lot more mainstream now. It wasn't so much a couple years ago.
Yeah.
But it, they understand that feeling of like loving something a lot and then people making fun of them for it. And then even to like talk about what you said, like when people look at cartoons and they think it's for kids. Like I was watching Family Guy and my mom was like, "Why are you watching this? Isn't this for kids?" And I was like, "No, I don't think kids should be watching." um, um,
Yeah, definitely.
but yeah, like a lot of Korean artists because they know that like for a while a lot of them couldn't make it in America. They would try really hard and then for some reason the American audience wouldn't connect to it, so then they would go back to Korea. But one of the places that they know for sure their music would hit and be really big is Japan. So a lot of the K-pop idols are forced to learn Japanese during their training process so that they can
Oh,
make
wow.
Japanese music in Japan. So
Wow.
you can BTS will have Japanese albums where they're singing fully in Japanese and have Japanese style music, and a lot of artists do that. So there's definitely a lot of overlap there. They probably do use those songs for animes and stuff like that.
That would definitely make sense. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I can like yeah, I can tell why like the music could yeah, definitely overlap somewhere. And then talking about culture, like how is the like the general culture in Korea, like is it similar to here? I mean, here a lot of artists, like when they start getting famous and all this, they start partying a lot, drinking maybe a lot, using drugs, like experimenting in like different kind of things. They might get lost, or is it like kind of like a very rigid schedule, like and then like they are taken care of? Like how is their life over
Mhm.
there?
So when they're just starting, right? And I think this is just when they haven't paid back their label yet and they
Mm.
haven't made enough money yet, or they're just not big enough where the label would regret dropping them. They're typically not allowed to do much. Blackpink has been very open about when they first started. They were not allowed to drink. They weren't allowed to drive. They weren't allowed to leave their hotel without someone with them.
Mm.
Um, it's very 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 strict. And as they get like BTS wasn't I don't know if this was like a formal rule, but they didn't feel comfortable even just taking their shirt off on camera. So when they were filming their reality shows where they were in the pool, you see them with their shirt on in the pool and it just looks odd.
Yeah.
But it's things like that where the label tries to protect them as much as possible to like stray away from any sort of sexual image. Just like get that completely out of the way. And then they're not allowed to show them doing even like smoking cigarettes would be a big issue there. Um, and tattoos is a big issue there, even though one of the BTS members has it, but they have to cover it up for broadcasting. So those things they're very, very strict about those things.
And is it because Korea itself, like, well, I mean, like in South Korea, is it like very conservative, or like people is like drinking, not like kind of like a almost like a sin? Like, what is their angle?
I think it's just because they call like so drinking, smoking, all of that stuff is not frowned upon in Korea if you're just like not a celebrity. Uh, because they call their celebrities idols over there, you have to literally be the image of perfection. So no smoking, no drinking, even though that's very normal in Korea.
Okay.
Um, their religion is, I believe, predominantly Christianity. So it's not like a religion that particularly says you can't drink. I'm not actually entirely sure if Christianity has those rules. But it,
You can like Christians can drink. I mean, like I guess like one of the main thing is like nothing in excess, right?
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
and then once they get out of this, do they get more freedom? Do they get to experience a little bit more, doing whatever they want?
I think a lot of them, when maybe if they like decide to not be singers anymore. They can do whatever they want. But a lot of them will still have to be kind of following the same thing even for years. I mean, there's been singers that apologize, like a public apology for getting married because that was seen as indecent. They're not allowed to date or any of that sort of thing.
Wow,
Yeah. So
that
it's a big scandal to date, which is something that is very shocking to me,
wow.
because the the fans want to think of the idol as very like almost think of the idol as their partner. So then to see them at dating, it's like very indecent to them.
Wow.
It's very odd. But
Yeah.
yeah, so
Hmm.
they've had to apologize for dating and stuff. So they can't even do that really normally.
Wow. That's very interesting. It must be very like it must be quite like a taxing lifestyle at some point.
Yeah, I would imagine. People feel like because people feel like they know you, and then they obviously don't. The label curates everything that they
Yeah.
want people to know. And
Hmm.
then when the fans think that they know this person, but then this person does something slightly different, then it's a scandal. And it's like, how could they do that to us? And then they get like a lot of hate. And it's like, no, you never knew them to begin with. So how did you know that they weren't that type of person?
You were talking in one of your video about like some LGBT Q plus teams that might been apparent in some of the K-pop clips. How is the whole culture in Korea about this? Well, how do they see this, and how is the K-pop industry like going through this whole cultural aspects of things?
I think I think the idols themselves are very supportive of the LGBT community, and I think the labels are too. I think a lot of Korea doesn't want to see that from the idols, and I think a lot of the fans don't want to see that. So I'm just making a theory here. In my mind, I think it's because the majority of some of the fandoms can be female and they want to date the idols. The idea of the idol being LGBT is not good. Or the other theory that I have is that Korean men, or specifically Asian men, have always been seen as more feminine. So
Mm,
the idea that one of them is gay almost fits into that stereotype, and then it makes K-pop look like that stereotype. So like I think it's either one of those two reasons why the fandom might get upset over something like that. I can't pinpoint exactly what, but I've literally seen people get so upset over the idea that one of the members could be gay, and it's like maybe, maybe not. We don't know, but yeah,
by blocking it, and by the hate is not doing any good to anyone, but it's always interesting to hear the different perspective.
yeah. There's this artist named Holland, right? So he's a solo artist in Korea. I think he was signed to a label. I can't remember which one, but he came out as gay and he was blacklisted from K-pop. So
Oh
he
wow.
had to start his own label and he had to do his own thing. And his story is absolutely crazy. And I think that shows an example of why these K-pop idols may not want to come out because they're scared
Yeah.
they'll lose their career. Yeah.
Well, not that long ago, it was like this even like for everything in life.
Mm,
Like if any kind of job could this could have happened.
yeah. I always say it's hard to well, it's not hard because a lot of people do it, but I think it's silly to be in entertainment and then be homophobic because that's like everyone around you.
Yeah. No, no, that's very true. Like in America, you have like these super kind of like conservative people that are very good at like doing business and like and then you have these kind of like more liberal people that are very artistic and pushing new ideas and things like this. And right now those two mentalities are very divided and polarized, but I feel like when we join both of those things together, that's when we can create
Yeah.
amazing things.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think America is divided, but I also think it's it's hard to limit a certain type of people or a certain subculture of people and to say that those people shouldn't create art or any of that sort of thing. I think it doesn't represent us. You know, like if the historians were to look back 100 years from now and then they don't see this type of people, I don't think it makes sense given how big it is in our culture. So I think having it being represented, even if you don't agree with it, is still very important because it's art. It's what it's supposed to be. Uh, Thankfully, we live in a world right now where everything is documented, so we'll be able to see it in hundred or thousand years.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing now with like like podcasts coming out. Like there's so many different interesting conversations you can hear now. It's not just the mainstream media controlling everything anymore, so that helps quite a bit. This is something also that I was wondering about, like in this like in the because in what you've been working on, analysis of K-pop and all of this. In Korea, is there a lot of people doing something similar to what you do? Or is it more limited, like how much people, like how is free speech over there? Can people say whatever they want about anyone? Or is it really controlled also by the government? How are things over there?
From what I'm aware, Korea, I think, is a democracy. So they don't have any specific rules on I don't know if gay marriage is legal over there, but they don't have any specific rules on like what you can and cannot say. That I think that would be like North Korea. But yeah, South Korea, you're pretty open. You can say whatever you want. I think the objection comes more from the people. So if you broadcast something gay on TV, I don't think that's illegal, but I think that the audience is going to have a reaction to it.
Hmm.
And so I think that the audience themselves, they feel free because they can speak on what bothers them, right? Um, so it's kind of weird because here we see free speech as like, oh, if you enjoy, you know, watching LGBT art or something, then that's free speech. Whereas over there, you can still do that. It's just that the general population might not like it. So
Hmm.
you're not fighting against the government. You're fighting against your peers. So I think that yeah, that's all fine. That's all great. It's definitely not a super controlled like dictatorship over there.
I know it's not this. I know it is a
Yeah.
democracy, and then I know I have a few friends that are from South Korea. Most people that I've met that are from there are like really great people, super open minded, very easygoing. And I mean, I studied music, so most of my friends from South Korea that I know are musicians, and they like it seems that music is a very big part
Mhm.
of their culture, and they're also all very great musicians. So, but yeah, as I said, I met them through music, so I'm sure there's also different talents, but it seems like music is a big thing over there.
Mhm. And wait, to answer the other question, there definitely are like social media stars and stuff over there, and a lot of trainees who couldn't make it as a singer will be on social media and they'll do that. And it's very the general like in being an influencer and being on social media is very big in Asia. Like Japan, live stream is a huge thing. China, it's huge on
Yeah.
like social media stars and stuff. So yeah, it's big all across Asia.
Yeah, China is just kind of like they have their own thing, right?
Hmm.
Like it's really closed in. Even like business wise, it's very different over there. When I started Music for Humans, actually, I was talking with some potential like business partner in China that wanted me to create something very similar for China. But the thing is like the deal they sent me, it was like they were taking everything, and I had like almost nothing left, and I had to do all the work, and they like it was really weird. I was like, yeah, I cannot do this, I cannot just like give you, and like they were taking all the rights, all the intellectual rights and everything. So it's I'm still not really familiar enough. We ended up cutting out the deal, and I ended up being like, I will put this on pause. Maybe later I meet
Mhm.
with a lawyer that specializes in Chinese business, but their whole internet is also different.
Yeah.
Like everything they use, like all their apps.
China is very different. But I think a lot of what they do is pretty smart. I think them keeping their social media to themselves means that money doesn't leave the country and it kind of stays within there. Them doing business is kind of odd because a lot of American businesses want to do business in China. There's a huge population over there, and so a lot of Chinese businesses are used to American businesses just agreeing with whatever terms just to get into the Chinese market.
Oh yeah.
And so, yeah, so it is very tough. I know that like specifically K-pop artists, they can't perform in China. And I
Uh,
don't know what the full regulation is on that, but it's very tough to get into that market.
wow. And then, so what are your future plans, projects? Daryl told me you're working into starting a podcast as well. What are you working on right now?
So I right now I we're kind of just reaching out to labels and a bunch of other PR companies, and we're trying to see if we can get some artists onto the channel and talk to them about their experience. I've been doing kind of the news commentary for about, I would say, 3 or 4 years now, and I've done interviews here and there with some like trainees and stuff like that. I would love to kind of take it to the next level and really get dive into these artists a bit more and kind of show their story a bit more because I think it's easy for me to sit here and talk about uh, everything like behind the scenes and what I know, but I think there's still a lot of people who might not believe because they're like, we want to hear it from the artist. So I would love for these artists to come in and to talk about it and stuff, if they can, of course. And I think it would just be really cool. I think my audience will love it. I think anyone who's interested in K-pop would definitely come by and watch that.
Definitely. And then what interests you the most about these people? Is it like their life, their lifestyle, their musical talent? Like where does your passion come from?
I'm obviously, we're all very passionate about their musical talent. Them as a person, also really cool. I think what separates them, like what is something very intriguing from them, is that they have this intense work ethic that is very admirable. And I think that that shines through even in interviews when you talk to them and they talk about how much they work and stuff. So I think that that is something that draws me to them. Because I think
Hmm.
we as entrepreneurs, we all kind of just relate to that.
Yeah, yeah. This is the other aspect too, because like they are never really themselves. So the way you were explaining it, they are playing. They basically have almost like a role that they have to play, and then I wonder if they at some point they just at first you play a role, but then eventually it's really hard to not become that role that
Yeah,
you're just playing all the
yeah.
time.
So balancing that bit where you are not yourself and then also yourself. And I think a lot of times they do become that person that they're trained to be.
Hmm.
Um, and I think it's interesting because a lot of these artists, like BTS, has sung about is the person you see on screen really me? Because like they've sung about topics like that, and I'm sure they felt that way before many times, or they don't know. Because if you look at even the youngest artist in BTS currently, I think he's like 25 or 26 or something, and he's been in the industry since he was like 13, maybe even a little before that. So if you take that, like he doesn't know 100% who he would have been if he didn't come into the industry. And
Yeah,
that is very interesting, yeah.
yeah. Yeah, we all wonder like every once in a while, like even like we all get doubts about our life choices, and then but yeah, sometimes I even wonder like what would I have been, if I didn't study music.
Yeah.
Because before I started touring, I was kind of like at my limit. I was like, okay, if this doesn't work now, like I really have to rethink my entire life, and I had invested so many years, so much energy into this. And then finally, just a few weeks later, I auditioned for a show, and then after this, I ended up leaving on tour for like 6 years, and then I did a bunch of other projects. But yeah, that fine line where like you're like, should I just like give up and do something else, or should I keep pushing?
Mhm.
And most of the time, if you keep pushing, is gonna happen, especially
Yeah.
if you work hard and you're doing them.
Yeah. Most people give up when it's hard, and I get it. There's many things, right? Like they could have a family and all that sort of stuff. And then that gets hard. But if they kept at it even for a little bit, they'll usually get it. Um, what's interesting about K-pop versus American pop music is that even in an American label, you're kind of you still have to you're still almost on your own. They'll give you a budget and then maybe a little promotion in the beginning, and that's kind of it.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like in K-pop, I think it's easier for like even the parents of the kids to be like, okay, well you're going to like school and then
Yeah,
you're gonna debut, and like there's like a roadmap for you. So they can kind of see it as like there's a plan there. Whereas like in America, it's like do whatever you want. And if you make money, then the label will help you more. But if you don't, then they'll freeze you or they'll drop you, you know? And
yeah.
so that I think is what is interesting about K-pop. It makes it more, I don't want to say accessible, but it makes it more like a real job.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a job. Yeah, it feels very similar to like when you get a touring gig, like well, I mean, obviously at a higher level.
Mhm.
So as we wrap up, do you have any final thoughts or messages you'd like to share with your listeners, our listeners, and fans?
I think if anyone is listening who wants to break into the industry or wants to do something, I think the important lesson from both of us actually is that we shouldn't give up and just keep trying. And you know, there are times that's going to be very tough where you're living 6 months in an Airbnb, but like you definitely shouldn't give up and keep going, because eventually you'll make it. Even if you end up taking a break and then coming back to it, just like keep going afterwards.
I totally agree. And how can people stay connected with you, follow your work, and join the discussion on K-pop topics?
So you can find me anywhere from my username, and if you want to specifically join me on YouTube and listen to K-pop and stuff, it's this name on YouTube as well.
Well, thank you so much for joining us
Yeah.
today.
Thank you for having me.
Talking with you.